All right, let's dive right into this explainer and uncover what was literally the ultimate hardware heist of the 1980s. We're heading back to the era of the Commodore 64, a machine that absolutely defined a generation. But we aren't just looking at the games themselves today, we're looking at how brilliant software developers completely rewrote the rules of the C64's architecture to create visuals that should have been technically impossible.
To understand how they pulled off the impossible, we've got to realize that true architectural dominance back then didn't come from just plugging in a hardware upgrade. There was no new graphics card you could buy. Instead, it came from manipulating time. As the demo scene coders used to say, the secret is not more processing power, the secret is catching the beam.
Take a look at this. It brilliantly illustrates the core mystery we're unraveling today. On one hand, you have the machine's strict, hardwired physical constraints. The VIC-II graphics chip was designed to handle a maximum of 8 hardware sprites, a fixed 16-color palette, and totally static screen modes. But on the other hand, developers routinely filled the screen with impossible graphics. I mean, we're talking 32 sprites at once, mixing high-res displays right alongside text modes. It's like finding digital fossils that completely defy the laws of physics.
So, the obvious question is, how? How do you break hardwired physical limits without a single hardware upgrade? Well, the answer lies in turning abstract code into a physical, real-time manipulation of the machine's display process. They weren't just programming, they were literally rewriting the physics of 1982 on the fly.
Section 1. Painting with the raster beam, the high-precision clock.
To get this, we really have to respect the physics of the draw. The Commodore 64 doesn't just render a full static frame in memory and blast it to the monitor all at once like our computers do today. No, it paints with light. It uses a raster beam. Think of it as an electron gun that physically sweeps across the display, drawing pixels line by line, top to bottom, exactly like a high-speed ink stream.
And what's so fascinating about this setup is that this relentless drawing jet actually acts as a visually synced timer. The C64's main processor runs at a super sluggish 1 MHz, which is way too slow to manage complex whole-frame logic. But if you can intercept this drawing jet mid-flight, you can actually change the hardware rules after one line is drawn, but before the next line even begins. To pull off this illusion, programmers had to figure out a way to track that beam. And they did it by continuously monitoring one specific memory address, register D012. By constantly polling this register, the slow CPU knows exactly which horizontal line the beam is currently drawing. It's basically your primary tracker, giving you eyes on the inside of the machine.
Section 2. Silencing the system noise, the prerequisites for precision.
But here's the catch. To hack the system, you need absolute quiet. The standard Commodore 64 operating system is incredibly noisy. It's constantly getting distracted by background tasks, checking the keyboard, updating timers, stuff known as maskable interrupts. If the system gets distracted checking a key press at the exact millisecond you want to change a color, your code is going to delay. So, you have to execute a precise 3-step silence protocol. Freeze system interrupts, execute your perfect split, and then restore the system connection.
By using the assembly instruction SEI, you essentially shush the kernel. You're forcing the CPU to drop absolutely everything and focus entirely on the raster beam. If you skip this step, you're going to get visual tearing or that dreaded walking jitter effect where your graphics violently shake on the screen. Absolute precision requires absolute silence.
Section 3. The integer overflow glitch, hitting the 8-bit ceiling.
Even with the system silenced, developers slammed into a massive roadblock. Looking at this, you can see the mystery perfectly contrasted. Using our tracker works flawlessly for swapping colors on the inner background screen. You get a beautiful, clean horizon. But look what happens when you try to target the thick outer border. It causes a bizarre, glitchy 3-color split. It goes red, then yellow, and then red again at the bottom. Why does it fail?
Well, the problem is an invisible mathematical ceiling. You see, register D012 is only 8-bit, meaning it can only count from 0 to 255. But the total screen height, including those thick top and bottom borders, is way more than 255 lines. So when the beam passes line 255, the register hits its limit, overflows, and wraps right back to 0. The CPU gets tricked into thinking the beam is back at the top of the screen and wrongly paints that top color at the very bottom.
Section 4. Tracking the 9th bit, the masterstroke of register D011.
To pull off the perfect border hack, developers desperately needed a backdoor to bypass this 255-line trap.
and they found the missing link in a secondary, multi-purpose register called D011. While D011 does a lot of things, developers realized its 7th bit functions as a master switch. The hardware automatically flips this bit to a 1 the moment the raster beam drops into that tricky lower border zone.
So by reading both of these registers simultaneously, the programmer magically transforms a hardwired 8-bit limitation into a seamless 9-bit map. Suddenly, you've got uninterrupted tracking covering the entire display area, from the very top border all the way down to the absolute bottom edge. And this brings us to a brilliant bit masking masterstroke. Register D011 is full of other data you just don't care about, so programmers use the assembly command &80. This acts like a filter, stripping away all the noise and isolating that specific value of 128. If the result is exactly 128, you know with absolute certainty that the beam is currently in the lower zone.
Once that overflow is confirmed, you combine it with a specific comparison value, like CMP #140. When the beam hits that exact coordinate, boom, you trigger the color swap. The result is a razor-sharp, glitch-free horizontal slice straight across the entire screen and border. It's pure architectural dominance.
Section 5. Manipulating time itself, the wider implications of the hack.
Okay, let's dive into how this foundational technique unlocked the true potential of the machine. Because we're chasing literal physics, the code actually changes based on your local power grid. European PAL systems run at 50 Hz, giving them 312 total raster lines. American NTSC systems run at 60 Hz, with only 262 lines. To put that into perspective, European coders had 56 lines of think time in the lower border to run complex code, while Americans only had 6. This is why some of the most mind-bending visual tricks were entirely PAL exclusive.
And what's really interesting here is that color splitting was just the skeleton key. Catching the beam allowed coders to manipulate time itself. They could draw 8 sprites at the top of the screen, and as the beam moved down, quickly changed our coordinates to redraw them at the bottom, multiplexing them to create the illusion of 32 sprites. They can mix high-res graphics and text modes on the fly, or pause scrolling registers line by line to forge the illusion of deep parallax backgrounds. By systematically overcoming glitches, isolating bits, and redirecting the hardware's core interrupt vectors, these developers weren't just writing applications, they were rewriting the very soul of the Commodore 64. They turned a rigid set of hardware rules into a flexible, programmable canvas. And if they messed up, the screen crashed into a mess of colors, and they just hit the reset button and tried again.
It really makes you wonder, as we wrap up this explainer, what could today's developers achieve if modern hardware was a playground built to be broken, explored, and mastered, just like the VIC-II chip? Back then, the impossible was always just a few raster lines away. Thanks for tuning in, and keep questioning the limits of your technology.
Had a bezel keyboard, heavy as a door, 64K of magic, and I still wanted more. I typed in my command line, feeling like a king, load star, comma 8, comma 1, and prayed it loads the thing. The screen was blue, the cursor bright, the tape was screaming through the night. Commodore 64, you're my pixel superstar, with your chunky little graphics and your SID chip from afar. Commodore 60, you were slow but never poor. You made us wait forever, then we came back for more. My joystick had one button. My joystick, one button, but I pressed it like a pro. Jumping over pixels in a world of green and gold. The sprites were square and funny, the music had that bite. The music had that bite. Every tiny loading screen became a Friday night. The floppy clicked, the tape would cry, but every crash was worth a try. Commodore 64, you're my pixel superstar, with your chunky little graphics and your SID chip from afar. Wi-Fi, no updates, no cloud account to sign. Just cables, keys, and patience, and a loading bar divine. No touchscreen, no drama. No battery, no drama, no battery at one. Just plug it in and type away, that's how we had our fun. Commodore 64, you're my pixel superstar. With your chunky little graphics and your SID chip from afar. Commodore 60, you were slow but never poor. You made us wait forever, then we came back for more. So boot it up, don't shut the door. We're dancing with the Commodore 64K, but dreams galore. Long live the Commodore 64.